and welcome to the Capital Conversation with me, Michael Hayman. Now, as the Beatles might have said, you say you want a revolution. Well, you know, joining me today is the mind behind one of the leading revolutionaries of UK financial services, Anne Boden. She's the CEO and founder of Starling Bank, the high-flying challenger bank that offers both personal and business banking through your mobile. It's been recognised not only as a disruptor, but has won the accolade of Best British Bank. And what makes it such a shining star? Let's find out. Anne, welcome to the show.
Hi, Michael.
Introduce us to the bank, introduce us to Starling.
Yeah, well, after 30-odd years in traditional banking, working for big banks all over the world, I believe we needed a new bank. And in 2014, I started Starling. And Starling is a retail bank. We provide consumers with services for all their banking needs. And we also do the same for small businesses.
I mean, you've not hung around, nearly 1 million customers.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's a phenomenal story of growth.
Things are really changing,
so
yes.
if you were to look at actually what was the tinderbox that got it going? I mean, when did you know, 1 minute you're a startup, the next minute you got 1 million customers? How's that work?
Well, I think it happens overnight. All of a sudden, you're trying to be noticed. You're trying to make sure that you're listening to customers and building something they want. And all of a sudden, there's a movement. There's lots of people that are clamouring for new features and new ways of doing business. And it's a roller coaster, and you have to hang on to that rocket ship.
Yeah, I mean, your advertising campaign. I mean, it's all over the tube. Feel good about money.
Yeah.
I mean, is that part of it? Are we not feeling good about money? Do you think?
Well, feeling good about money is important. If you have too much money or not enough money, it causes stress. And there's all that feeling going on in your head. Can you manage those day-to-day finances? The most important thing in your life is your health and your family's health. And then it's your financial health.
Do you get a sense that this, I mean, especially within London, I mean, do you think you're onto something here with a sense that actually the connection between money and well-being is something that's driving
but it's very, very important to take it outside London. FinTech is not for Shoreditch; it's for everyone. And one of the things
we are London Live, Anne. So
well, what we're trying to do is take the energy that's going on in London and actually take it outside. In London, everybody's talking about FinTech.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about new ways of banking, and we need to actually make sure that more people benefit from these good feelings.
And you are resolutely tech rather than the fin, if you know what I mean. I mean, you've gone for a mobile-based business. I mean, this is not about lots and lots of real estate and bank branches.
Well,
I mean,
I'm a computer scientist. I started in London in the early 80s. As a computer scientist working in the banking industry. And, for a long time we were in the back room, we were there supporting. And in the last 10 years, technology has really changing financial services. And we're out there giving new financial technology to lots and lots of people.
I mean, you get the sense that, London's tech scene, the UK's tech scene it's got an abundant number of bright young businesses that want to go for it. But whereas we start businesses up, many of them, those that scale, those that actually achieve what you've achieved are fewer and further between. Is there a formula, do you think? Is there a learnable lesson in what you've managed to achieve with this business?
I think it's very important to embrace scale and realise you can't be a small big bank. We have the vision of providing our services to millions of people, and therefore you have to scale and you have to embrace it. I personally spend a lot of my time studying businesses that have grown, that have embraced the euphoria of getting bigger and bigger, and actually still listening to customers. There's no pleasure in actually being big, but not actually delivering what people want.
Right. I mean, do you self-identify as an entrepreneur?
Now I think I'm an entrepreneur for many, many years.
Because your background is with very big companies, right?
I know. For 30-odd years, I worked for large corporations all around the world. I was a banker, and doing the financial services, I became ashamed to be a banker. I'd get into a taxi after work at night and go, the taxi driver would ask, what do you do for a living? And I'd say anything but a banker. The banking industry was in a crisis.
Did you make it up?
Sometimes I thought I was working in insurance. But I basically, went into a situation 2008, 2009, where things were pretty horrible. And
what did you learn about yourself? I mean, I suppose, what did you learn about yourself in a crisis, and what did you learn about yourself as a newly formed startup entrepreneur?
It's really different being an entrepreneur. I went from having a job and an office and thousands of staff to wandering around the city in 2014, knocking on doors, saying, saying, I'm going to start a bank and this bank is going to be different. This bank is going to do things in a different way for customers. It's going to be technology enabled. It's going to be scalable. It's going to be fair to customers and just fund me. And that is very humbling.
I mean, you're part of a group of businesses that are very much on the kind of the consumer radar. Revolut, Monzo. We had Tom Blomfield on the show. I mean, what you tend to get a sense of is very much a mission-driven culture in these businesses. In terms of your own business, if you were to try and sort of, I guess, articulate the mission, what it is you're trying to achieve, how would you sort of capture it for us?
Yeah, I think we're looking at a different sort of world where people get best value from their financial resources. For many, many years, customers were caught out by banks, and every other industry has changed, and technology has helped people buy music, has helped people shop. I came to the conclusion that technology was not helping people with their financial needs. So at the very heart of this, we want to make people comfortable, with their money.
But it wasn't that long ago that you'd be more likely to change your partner than change your bank. I mean, inertia has been a big part of the consumer journey. So what's changed?
People are changing.
Right.
People are actually trusting new organisations. People are energised by new organisations that really think about the right thing for customers, and they're signing up in their millions. And many, many years ago, I used to sit in boardrooms, or we all sat around the table and talked about the dominance of the big players, and we never thought a new player could enter the market and really change people's behaviour. And it's happening now.
It's happening now. But you're not. I mean, the things I've read about you is that this isn't necessarily about regime change. I mean, you still see a place for the big banks as part of the mix. I guess how does that more cooperative environment work in practice? I mean, aren't you after each other's customers?
Yeah, we're competitors, and the big banks will copy absolutely everything we do. All the new banks come up with features. 2 years later, the big banks will copy them.
So you're like the R&D department.
But it's not a race about innovation. It's about cost base. They will copy everything the new guys do, but they'll do it 2 years later, but they cannot reduce their cost base. And I think the battle is going to be, can the HSBCs, the RBSs and the Lloyds of this world really trim their cost base to compete with people like ourselves?
And of course the trigger for this is open banking. I mean, it's much discussed as a jargon point in the industry. Explain it for viewers in terms of what it is, what it means.
Well, there was legislation in Europe called the Payment Services Directive, which meant that banks were mandated to open up their systems to let customers take their data and move it to new banks. And the Competition and Marketing Authority in the UK believed that this, implemented in the UK as open banking, would help people to move from bank to bank.
Right.
Now, we're at the early stages at the moment, and although, it's in its infancy, it hasn't really delivered an awful lot.
Right, but the expectation is that there's going to be a lot more innovation in services. I mean, if you were to think about what might great look like, what should people get excited about apart from the ability to switch banks? What's coming down the pipe?
I think what people should be excited about is that, up until now, we've only had incremental change in banking. It was branches, and then it was the contact centre, then it was the web, the internet and the app. The next phase of development is going to be banking all around you, plus invisible banking.
So what does that mean? I mean, it sounds like it's a superhero.
Well,
so
it means that you go into...
Invisible bank, why is that?
It means you go into a branch, into a shop, and you take things off the shelves and you get charged. Instead of being charged once a quarter for your utility bill, you get charged as you used. As you get into your self-driving car, you get charged as you go.
So it's
quicker. I think payments are going to be different.
More convenient. Will we save money through this?
Well, I hope that lots of the savings in the large organisations and the banks will actually accrue to customers. People like ourselves, employ 700-800 people. That saving is going to go and going to be the benefit of consumers.
And just quickly before we go to the break, the decision to bring business banking and consumer banking much closer together? What's driving that?
Well, people live very, very different lives nowadays. Lots of customers have a small business or may have a consultancy firm, whatever. We believe that we shouldn't separate work and play.
So this is converging.
Yeah.
So this reflects the way that
we
people
live
are living
our
their
lives.
lives. Yeah. I mean, and do you get a sense that customers, I mean, do business people like that? Do they want to know that their private life is separate to their business life, or is that actually this the way that we're going to see it go?
I think we have a situation where people want to bank, so 24/7. People want to do a bit of banking, perhaps in the evening when they have some time, and don't want to go to a branch to do the banking with the branch manager at a certain time. We allow people to mix business with pleasure.
Well, I'm just thinking of all our viewers doing a bit of banking while they're watching the show this evening.
Okay.
And we're going to go to the break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about closing the fintech gender gap and opening up to investment. Don't go away. Welcome back. My guest today is Anne Boden, Chief Executive and founder of Starling Bank. Now, Anne, I'm reading here that according to the World Economic Forum, it's going to take 108 years to close the gender gap between men and women. And not a great state of affairs.
And it's not getting any better. When I started in the industry in the early 80s, there was a problem. There were hardly any women, and it's not getting any better. I work in finance. I'm a technologist.
I mean, they're both male-dominated.
Yeah, and I'm an entrepreneur, so there are very, very few women.
Right. And in terms of how you've been able to get to where you've got to, because against all of those three areas, I mean, you're a multi-award winner as an entrepreneur, as a technologist, and as a banker. I mean, in terms of how you've managed to sort of break through there, what would you put it down to?
Never give up. I think that, my first appraisal in my very, very first job, my boss sat me down and said, "You've done very, very well, Anne, but tone down your aspirations, otherwise you get very frustrated." And I used that energy to say, like hell am I going to be put down? I'm going to actually sort of aim high. And that's the start of, the ascendancy to what I do today.
So ambition has been a big part of your journey.
Yeah.
And when you look at the overall business scene around you, I mean, how ambitious do you think it is?
I think that there are lots of people in London that are striving to change the whole industry. London at the moment is where fintech is happening. We are changing banking on a global stage, and it's all happening around here.
I mean, do you get the sense that that ambition is more than just money? I mean, actually more than money. That's somebody else's campaign, isn't it? But I mean, it's like, but I mean, in terms of the purpose, the contribution you're trying to make as a business person, I mean, to what degree is that driving you? To what degree is that driving your team?
I think I became very, very embarrassed about, the role of the banking industry in the financial crisis. Post-financial crisis, I went into Allied Irish Banks as Chief Operating Officer to do the turnaround. And that was horrific. There was a small country with big banks that wrecked a country. And when you go out and talk to people in those towns and villages, you realise how bad the financial crisis was. And I came to the conclusion that, it is possible to change an industry. It's going to be very, very tough. But I wanted to actually spend my time to actually see if I could bring technology to this industry and turn it around.
I mean, I don't want to leave the kind of the sort of women in business just yet, but I mean, do you get a sense that the big financial institutions get it now, that they get the kind of message that you and others are putting out there in terms of the responsiveness, the sort of the change that needs to be had?
I think that the big banks, the boardrooms of the big banks around the world, all sit, in various meetings and discuss what they have to do to transform. They get digital. They get there are people like ourselves that are going to change the industry. They're taking it very seriously, but they have a very, very difficult problem to deal with. It is not easy to change these organisations. Doing those technology transformations very, very difficult and very risky.
But presumably this more inclusive environment is also a big part of where things need to go to address that. I mean, what does your organisation do to promote that agenda as part of its leadership structure?
Yeah, but people join Starling because they want to do something that really matters. We have a whole generation of people that believe that as an organisation, we are not just going to sort of be worried about profitability. We have to really focus on our relationship with the community, our relationship with our customers. And people who believe in that vision, that mission, want to work with a company like Starling.
And you've got teams around the country now. Yeah. Cardiff was opening or has opened?
Just opened.
Just opened.
Yeah.
So,
and Southampton as well.
So when you grow and you get that bigger team, how does the culture endure? How do you make sure that the kind of Starling ethos is as true in Cardiff, today as it is, back with the home team that set this up?
Yeah.
Back all those years ago.
It's very, very difficult. But the important thing is that we recognise that cultures need to change and evolve. I need to recognise what the people working in the business and what the customers want at that particular time. But we work very hard in culture because it's a movement. What we're trying to do is to fix people's financial health. And therefore you must believe in it and actually identify with it.
You see, I think people are listening and they'll love the idea of a movement because it implies all of the activism and excitement and the kind of belief structures. But when you actually sort of see that in a political context, but a commercial context, how does it work?
It's very difficult. I think that we have to recognise that our end goal is profitability, and we hope to be profitable by the end of next year. And we have commercial investors, but we're hoping to share the spoils of this business with our customers and with the community.
So I would have thought a key phrase or key word for a business like yours is fairness. That people, and I suppose the question is that when you are a business that's seeking to do things in a different way, a fairer way, how does that purpose relate and sort of live with the need to make profit and shareholder return? Yeah,
you have to come through the door of Starling and you can touch it. You can feel the culture. You can feel the fact that we passionately believe in making people's lives more comfortable with money. And people either get it or they don't get it.
And I mean, you've taken on external investment into the business to grow.
Yes.
Do your investors get it?
Yeah, they do. I think our investors have always got the idea of using information, using data to help customers rather than against them. I spent 30 years in organisations that believed that data was something you used against customers to sell them more stuff. I think the world has moved on and our investors get the fact that you have to have a social conscience.
I mean, at the moment, it feels, there's a lot of things on the agenda, political, Brexit, elections, you name it, they're all happening. How good does the customer feel right now?
I think the customer is trying to get through day to day. They're trying to manage their day-to-day money. And our set of tools, whether you're for a small business or an individual, help you manage your day-to-day finances.
I mean, interestingly, you've set your sights on other areas. I see that you say that health is an area that needs shaking up. Tell us more.
Yeah, I think that we're actually looking at the whole aspect of making the challenges of addressing mental health. Money,
so this is well-being?
Yes, well-being, yeah. So we believe very much so that individuals can have a better standard of living, can have a better mental health if they manage their money in a better sort of way.
Now, you wrote a book, The Money Revolution.
Yeah.
Just without sort of turning this into an Amazon review, I mean, you made it. This is a pitch for everything that goes on in fintech land. I read, in terms of actually understand it, make the most of it. I mean, in terms of the message to the reader, what did you want to get out of that?
There were so many books about for the techies. There were so many books about the people in the industry, but we wanted people who, living all over the UK that wouldn't necessarily come in contact with fintech to understand all these tools and what they can do for them. And it doesn't just talk about Starling. Most of the book is about all the other competitors in the market. The idea is let's try and get those people all over the country to start using these tools and getting better value.
So giving people the knowledge.
Yes.
So the knowledge. I mean, and in terms of, you're a very driven person. I mean, you can see that. It comes across in the interview. But in terms of how you sustain your own energy, I mean, with so many different things to look at, what's your lesson to self? What have you found out about keeping the show on the road?
Yeah, I read a lot. I read lots of books by entrepreneurs about people that have built great companies. And what you recognise in these books is that everybody has good times and bad times. And it's inspirational. And I use that to drive the business forward.
And what's been your biggest coping lesson, I guess, in terms of when you think about the highs, the lows. We're often good at dealing with the highs. What about the lows? What gets you through those?
Well, you know that tomorrow is going to be always better.
Tomorrow's always going to be better. And if you were to just thinking back now, I mean, you're a person whose career has taken a lot of different sort of forks in the road, from big banking to being an entrepreneur to growing this challenger organisation. If I was to sort of take you back to 2010, in the sort of the height of the financial crisis, what would you tell yourself then? What have you learnt about yourself in the intervening period?
I think that I went into the crisis being very proud of the job I was doing. I was a banker that was working for a large organisation supporting big businesses all over Europe, flying into Kazakhstan, flying into Madrid and talking to businesses trying to make big money in those countries, sometimes US companies or Asian companies. And then I realised we were on the edge. It is very, very easy for all that to fail. And I decided to do some research, started going around the world, talking to people about what had happened in the crisis. And I had the opportunity to do something, and I took that opportunity, and we have Starling.
Did you have any doubt at the time?
Yeah, of course I had doubt. All entrepreneurs have doubt. But you use that doubt.
What was that, fear of failure? Or?
Yeah, I came to the conclusion that the only thing that I was really worried about was looking silly and failing. And I realised that if you try to do something that's truly audacious, that is really, really big, you can't be criticised for failing.
And if it's big and audacious, very last point, but what's mission accomplished for you?
Changing an industry. I think Starling's doing really, really well. But the industry has to change. And when the big boys respond to us and make products safer and fairer for their customers, we're not just changing our part of the industry, we're changing the industry on a global level.
Wow, what a place to leave it. Anne Boden, thank you very much indeed for joining me on the show, and a true change maker in terms of a view for the future. And thanks to my guest, Anne Boden, the fintech founder with the future of banking in her sights. And of course, Starling Bank is one of the leading challengers transforming UK financial services right now. It's a disruptor with no plans to slow down anytime soon, and a revolution we're all invited to join. And for more stories of fresh ideas and fast growth from founders with a vision to change the world, join me next time on The Capital Conversation. I'll see you then.